Support for the podcast is brought to you today by Maria Sanders, Parent Coach. Maria is a licensed clinical social worker and PCI certified parent coach who has built upon her experience as a school social worker, teacher, and parent to share methods, approaches, and behaviors that work. She takes the time to learn about each individual family she works with and customizes a personal plan that brings the parent closer to their family goals. Maria works with families who have children over the age of 6 who are demonstrating challenging behaviors. Parent coaching is a dynamic, collaborative process. This process can help deepen your relationship with your child and end common battles such as homework, bedtime, and chores. It can reduce your stress level and help you find more joy and satisfaction in your role as a parent. Together, you will unravel your challenges, clearly articulate your goals, and develop strategies and a plan of action. Consultations with Maria Sanders are available via phone or video and in person for families local to the Montclair, New Jersey area. For more information, visit mariasandersparentcoach.com. Hello, parents, and welcome back to Parenting Stuff I Wish I Knew Sooner and Want You to Know Now. I'm your host, Erica Desper, founder of the Center for Confident Parenting, and a mom who seems to learn everything I need to know the hardest way. And well after I need to know it, I'm on a mission to try to help you avoid the same experience. To that end, today I'm joined by Sean Kramer, a licensed professional counselor who works with adolescents and adults with anxiety, ADHD, depression, self-harm, relationship issues, and autism spectrum disorder. And we're going to discuss how we can be with our teenagers in ways that will help them feel close, grow up well, and keep us sane at the same time. Sean, thank you for joining me today.
Oh, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. I'm glad to have you. So before we dig into our topic of what parents need to know, tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, how or why you came to do this work, all the things.
Yeah, sure. So I'm married, and we've been married for about 18 years, and we have 2 kids. We have 2 teenagers, 15 and 16.
Exciting.
And so I'm in it. Right alongside the families that I'm working with.
Those are the best guests.
Why I became a therapist, I just love talking to people, and I love trying to understand people, and always found myself wanting to know more when I would talk to friends and family and others and figure out, what they need and what they want. And, it turns out there's a job for that. And, after a long time doing social work in the city, I realized that, I loved, my favorite days were the ones where I got to have those kind of deeper conversations with people. So then I went into the therapy field. And after getting into this field, I found out quite surprisingly that I just love working with teenagers. Love, love, love. They're funny, they're smart, they're irreverent, they're honest, they will call you out on your nonsense, right? They are curious and excited, and they want to know about the world, and they want to know who they're going to be, and they want to make a difference. And I think they're all the best parts of us in many ways. So it's a blast. I just adore it.
I love that description of teenagers. I don't know if most people would initially, if that's how they would describe teenagers. But those things are all true. Yeah. And I think maybe if we do a mindset shift of like, this is who they are at the root of it, that would be helpful. Yes. Well, I love that. That's beautiful. And I imagine, so you were doing this before your kiddos were teenagers, yes. But now like you're super prepared, right? And everything just goes beautifully for you.
Oh, yes. It's all just as easy as it is when I explain it to the families.
We professionals know it does not work that way when you're dealing with your own kiddos. But despite that, we are happy to hear your, advice and insights for sure. So as my audience probably knows at this point, I would hope, unless this is your first episode, welcome. I am the parent of a 14-and-a-half-year-old boy. He is neurodivergent, and this topic could not have come at a better time for us. We have hit, all the things associated with
puberty, the mood swings, a little bit of sneakiness, although I have a pretty honest, good kiddo, some poor choices that weren't well thought out, combined with just a desire to, be on his phone, be in his room, be with
Yeah.
his friends, which
Yeah.
I'm making peace with. In some ways it's a gift. I'm like, oh, well, now we can like be in the same house, but I don't have to entertain him. He kind of wants to do his own thing. So sometimes I feel really positive about that.
Yes.
And other times I'm like grieving the loss of, the dynamic that we once had.
Yes.
It kind of depends on my own mood, how I'm going to, feel about it.
Yes.
So can you help parents who are navigating the teen years to understand, like, first of all, what is this dynamic shift that we're dealing with like the privacy and the wanting to be with friends and the wanting to be away from the parents? And because it's a little
Yes.
shocking sometimes. My friends are ahead of me, so I knew it was coming.
Right.
But I would think not everyone knows that's coming and maybe takes it personally.
Yes, I agree. I think that, and that's a great point to make about, you might take it personally if you don't know it's coming. And um, it's really helpful to not take a lot of this personally. But I think you need to know what to expect a little bit in order to not take it personally, right? So I think that everything you just said about what your son is doing, those are all developmentally appropriate, right?
Right? He's right on track.
Right on track, right? Even sneakiness, it's like that's privacy, right? They're wanting privacy. They're making their own decisions, right? They're wanting to decide what they want to do, not what we want them to do, right? He wants to be with his friends, meaning he wants to, connect and be, have close friendships and relationships with people outside of his own family. That's healthy, right? We want that they're growing into, they're growing into adulthood. I always think about teenagers as like they have one foot on each side of the line between child and adult, right? And they're going back and forth, in any given moment, they're kind of stepping back and forth along those lines. They're doing a lot of hard work at this age developmentally. Their brains have moved and are moving, I should say, from concrete black and white thinking from childhood to abstract thinking in adulthood, right? And they can switch in those things within a minute, right? You can be having a profound conversation with your kid where they're telling you, they're having insights about world affairs or morality, on the one hand, and then the next minute you're like, but can't you just put the toilet paper on? Right? Like, how do you forget to do that every single time, right?
Oh yeah.
So that's one thing that they're trying to do, right? Is like use this newfound ability to think abstractly, which is a superpower that humans have, right? And apply it to all different kinds of situations, right? So this level of kind of moral development and social development that they're starting to develop, right? Like, why are things the way they are? How should they be, right? According to me, right? How do I think they should be? Why do my parents think it should be this way, but I think it should be this way, right? And they're constantly, why does school have this rule, right? They're questioning why things are the way they are, and that's their job. And it can be absolutely infuriating for parents sometimes. It's like, just do it, please, right? Because you have to, right? But it's really important because they're learning how to engage in a deeper way, and they have a real desire to do that. And
I always said I wanted to raise a critical thinker, but then when I saw how that turned back on me, I was like, oh, but I didn't mean for you to pick apart everything I say. On other people and other issues, not me.
Well, I already did that. Right. I'm right.
But
you don't have to worry.
Maybe it means I did a good job.
Yeah, you absolutely did. You absolutely did. And if they are and they're talking about those things with you, that's a great sign. That's a great sign.
Right.
They're also doing this thing where this is one of the most infuriating things for parents, which is in adolescent brain development. Nature plays a trick on us parents by allowing and promoting the development of the pleasure part of an adolescent's brain much more quickly than their thinking part,
Mhm.
their executive functioning, and right, and judgment part develops. And that's important because it makes them take risks, right? In terms of evolution, it's like you go out and you find the new territory, right? You try the new thing, you try the new way of doing something. That's good, right? Being able to take risks and see what's around the corner, because you're curious and because it's going to be fun. It also scares the life out of parents a lot of the time,
Yes.
right? And so what we want to do is keep them. We're constantly trying to do this dance, and I don't know how to do this very well either. I just want
Thank you for your
everybody to know, like,
honesty.
we're all in the muck together of trying to keep them safe and also allow them freedom to
Mm,
try new things and take
mm.
healthy risks, right?
Yeah.
And it's terrifying, isn't it?
Yeah. I try to get excited when I see a way for that to happen that isn't truly terrifying or dangerous. Like first I want to panic and be like, no, 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 no. And then I'm like, you know what? This is a way that we can like have both, and let him be like, ooh, I didn't see that coming. And I'd be like, huh, how could you have done that? What would you have done differently?
Right.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm working on now, is like look for this, I guess, the safer risks, where
Yes.
he can kind of learn that process, and that thinking ahead is important without it being like life
Life threat, yeah,
threatening.
right, right. It's like, great, try a new team, try a new job, try a new friend or
Yes.
activity, right? Maybe not, I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no end to the things that kids can try that are dangerous too, right?
Mhm.
So that's where, you know, advance thinking and discussion and prevention by just staying close to your kid and talking a lot comes in, right? Um, so I tell parents, like, as early as makes sense to you, or as early as you can, start to talk about how to keep yourself safe and the risks and of things like substances, right?
Mhm.
And sexual behavior and these kind of things. We want our kids to have the information that they need. So if and when, right, they're in situations where they're going to take risks, um, that they, our voice is in the back of their head somewhere, reminding them, about how to stay safer. They're going to make mistakes, right? They're going to try stuff that we wish they wouldn't have tried, or that we never find out about, and that kind of thing, right? And that's part of their job,
Yeah.
is to try those things. And we just have to do our level best to make sure they have the information that they need in order to do the safer thing.
Yes. Well, and this isn't a question I gave you in advance, but it's on my mind, because of personal events that have unfolded recently.
Yeah.
So my son's still in a place where he will slowly eventually kind of say like, hey, I did this, or whatever. And
Yeah.
I, at the moment, I'm taking the stance of like like almost no reaction
Yep.
whatsoever, like, oh, kind of thing.
Interesting.
tell,
Right.
tell me more.
For you.
And the inside, I'm like freaking out, right?
Right.
um because I don't want to lose. I don't know how long, if that will last. I don't know how long it will last. And I figure any kind of reaction, positive, negative,
Yes.
whatever, might kind of shut that door. So I
Yep.
just kind of stay neutral. And what I found is that he kind of gets to his own, like, yeah, I didn't see the big deal. I really don't want to try it again. And I was like, huh, that's interesting. That's kind
Yeah.
of what I thought, you would think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it just kind of an even keel?
Yes.
Like, is that our best first
Yes.
thing that
I,
we can do?
I am so impressed by how you manage that and how you described
Nice.
it. I know, it felt really impressive in the moment too, right? Yeah.
Yes.
It's like, what am I doing? No, I think that's wonderful. I think that I often tell parents, like, it's the most important parenting skill that we can um, call upon in the day to day is our ability to regulate our own emotions,
Mhm.
right? and to stay calm, and to listen and take in information before we respond, right? And to choose to respond rather than to react. And a lot of us didn't grow up with parenting like that, right? We grew up with parenting that maybe was reactive, and
Yes.
that's an unlearning task that a lot of us have to do. It's
Yes.
hard work. But to be able to just kind of take it in, think about like, what's really going on here? Where's my kid in terms of their development? What are they trying to figure out? Right? What do I want them to learn from this? And what more information do I need before I, get involved here is
Right.
crucial. So if you know you're a reactive person, right? You get upset quickly. You start, kind of giving advice quickly or commands. No judgment,
Mhm.
but that's an area to grow for yourself and for
Yeah.
your kid. And
Right.
there's great therapists can help. Certainly individual therapy can help. There's also great books like Parenting from the Inside Out, which
Mm.
is wonderful, or anything involving what we call attachment parenting or attachment
Mhm.
based family therapy. If you want to read anything like that, it really teaches you to stay calm before you and be open to your kid before you
Right.
react.
Well, and if I had reacted, I would have stepped all over his own realization.
Yes.
Like I was just so grateful in that moment that I did kind of just zip it because
Yes.
he got there anyway. But it didn't have to come from me. Like everything's so much more powerful if he can decide it for himself.
100%.
And he is the kind of kid. He's always been the kind of kid. Like you could say, "This is really hot. Be careful." And
Yep.
the next thing he's going to do is touch it to
Yep.
see if, like,
Yep.
right. So
Yep.
it's just
Absolutely.
there's really no value in that.
Right. Except you maybe get into conflict, right? If you're going to, right,
Yes.
try to prevent it and tell him not to touch the stove and he's going to do it
Right.
anyway, right?
Exactly.
Why
Which
have
puts
the
you in a
argument?
tough place. Like you
Yes.
don't want to not give the warning, but yeah, it's just messy. So yes, that would be my one. We're all in it together, like you said. And my one tip would be work on your reactivity,
Yep.
I mean, in therapy, they call it holding space. And
That's
most of us are
right.
not great at that or even know what it is.
Yes.
Because when we're listening, we're already thinking ahead to our reply and
That's
with
right.
kids maybe to our advice. How am I going to solve this? But we need to like
Yes.
pause on the solutions and the advice and just hear and then just reflect back what they're
Absolutely. I
saying.
often tell parents, like, if you're not sure in that moment, like sometimes our kids will come to us and they'll tell us
Hmm.
about a thing that happened that they're upset about. And we'll want to be like, well, did you try this? Or did you do this?
Hmm.
Or you should try this, right?
Hmm.
Um, and a lot of times that's where we get pushback from our kids,
Hmm.
especially during adolescence. And you're like, but why are
Right.
you telling me this if you don't want me to help you figure
Yep.
it out? They
Well,
don't
and
want you to,
no,
right?
and all of us, I mean, especially, I don't want to make blanket gender statements, but especially as women, as wives, um, and I know not everybody identifies the same, but I'm just going to use
Sure.
those traditional
Yeah.
terms.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've all, and I'm sure it goes the other way too. I know my husband complains about this. We all have had an experience where we just wanted to vent about something. Like
Correct.
this customer service phone call I had was so brutal, and like listen to what they did to me and how long I was on the phone and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And if someone comes back at you with like, well, why didn't you just, you're like, wait, that okay, yeah, sure, I could have done that.
Right. Right. But you're not listening to how frustrating this
Right.
conversation
What I
is.
want to do right now is just like tell you how it went, right?
Yes.
And I don't want to feel belittled for like, why didn't I think of that? Or because hindsight is always, 2020. So I
Yeah.
think the easiest way to maybe communicate with our teens is to think like when you are relaying something like that, what do you need
Yes.
in that
Yes.
moment? Like if someone offers you a solution, you could feel all kinds of things. You could feel like you're being dismissed. You could feel
Yep.
like they thought you made the wrong decision.
Yep.
Why didn't you think of this?
Yep.
So we just want to try
Yep.
to avoid all of that.
Yes.
It's hard. It's really hard.
It is hard. I often say, like, if you're not sure, because so often we're not sure, if you're not sure what your kid is asking, just ask them, like, is
Yeah.
this one of those times where you'd like me to listen, or do you
Right.
want me to do you want me to help?
I
Right?
love that. Yeah. I'm also big lately on saying like, you know what? I I want to give you a really good answer to this, or like really updated information, evidence-based information, whatever. Like I probably wouldn't use that term with my teen, but you know what I mean? But I'm not, like recently he asked about the long-term effects of some substance because a friend was getting involved. And I was like, look, I don't want to just give you my personal scaremongering opinion of like, don't do that. It's so bad. I was like, we're going to look some stuff up so that you have concrete, you know, answers. And also because I know that there is, for him, there's so much more value when it doesn't come from me. Plus I felt like I was kind of evening out the, like, you know what, let's find this out together. Whereas I could have been like, you know, this is what smoking is going to do to you. Right.
Don't worry about it.
And I also didn't know he was asking for a friend. But I do truly think, I mean, I was able to guess after several guesses. I got like 3 guesses who he was asking for, but you know, you never know exactly who's for, where it's coming from.
That's right.
So I got a book, you know, a book from the library. It seemed like a very good, fair source. It was not using like scare tactics.
Fantastic.
We did very little reading in it, but I think there was like okay, like yes.
What a great model, right? That you were being in that, right? Like, let's find out. Because then he knows a lot of things. First of all, you don't freak out when you hear, you know, somebody talk about a drug, right? Like it's not the end of the world. You can talk about it. You modeled that you don't know the answer to everything, right? And you're not afraid of saying that. And you modeled that you can go find out, right? Like you can go and do your research, right? So now next time he has a question like this, he can do that.
That's what I was hoping. And this was on the smaller side. So again, I was like, this is a great way to practice. Like you can come and you can ask that and it, you know, it will still be okay.
That's great. I love that.
And again, we want to make very clear, we're not doing this perfectly. We may not even be doing this well. So I am pulling out examples that I felt good about.
Right. Not the times where it's like 11 at night and you're, you know, we're all melting down. Right. We all have those too.
And we've talked about this on this podcast before. They meaning children, but particularly teenagers, like he will want to talk to me about anything all day long, no matter how many questions I ask, no matter how open-ended they are. And then time to like say goodnight when I can't keep my eyes open. It's like the floodgates open, and it's adorable and it's frustrating and it's sweet and it's, you know, all the things. But as I get older, it's probably more frustrating because I'm so tired.
I know.
And I take into like, I'll listen a little bit and be like, dude, I love you so much and I can't keep my eyes open. We're going to have to talk about this tomorrow. I don't know if it's the dark or the relaxation or I don't know what
it is. It's really, it's so common and it's so funny and adorable and frustrating all at the same time, right? It's, you know, adolescence, one of those things that they're doing where they're kind of have one foot, you know, on each side of things is that they want to be close to us, but they want to do it on their terms, right? So they want to do a drive-by, right? They want to, you know, you're like incapacitated because you're like, you know, then they can come in and start to talk and then they can leave when it's their time, right? And that's what they do. They open up when it's.
Well, and I wonder, you keep saying about the 1 foot in each, you know, end of the development. When they're little, that is the time that we tend to be like, I mean, every house is different, but snuggly and talk about our day and read the stories and think about the next day. And at some point that kind of goes, like, I remember when he didn't want us to do that anymore. And then we kind of forced like we're still going to read to you a little bit. And now he's like, guys, I really don't want you to do my bedtime. Like, you got to let that go. So I am respecting that. It's not easy, but I wonder if this is his version of still kind of clinging to that. I used to think it was a stall tactic, and at times I'm sure it was. But now, I think it's all of that, and we just kind of have to build it into the to the evening, I guess.
Yeah, you do. You know what? So there's a really great therapist for adolescents who writes for the New York Times, and her name is Lisa D'Amour. I
Mhm.
love her stuff. You know about her.
I think I am a
Yeah,
little familiar with her. Yeah.
she writes a lot of books, and her articles in the New York Times are fantastic. And she writes about this very phenomenon of kids doing the drive-by, as parents
I
are in
love that
bed.
term.
Yeah, and so what she said she does is she kind of builds it in. Now her kid doesn't know she's building it in, but she gets
Right.
into bed and she's like, kind of on the lookout,
Expecting
like
it.
I know I got to get in and wait for, just be available for about 15 minutes before
Yeah.
I turn out the light. And I think she's very smart about kind of um, managing her own environment and her own behavior in order to meet the needs of her teenagers, within reason,
Mhm.
right? But just kind of knowing what to expect. For example, like she says, if you really want your kid to talk to you, don't ask them how their day, their
Right.
day was, right? But go for a drive or do a thing, right? Do something, right?
Oh, that works so great for us. And
Yes.
I always attribute that to his neurodivergence, which we'll talk more about in a second.
Mhm.
But yes, this kind of conversation, you
Yep.
get nothing. You get shut
Yep.
down.
Yep.
Unless he can be doing something
Yes.
at the same time, which we used to take as like not listening or rude or disrespectful. And of course we had to work through that, particularly
Sure.
my husband, his stepfather. But yeah, on a walk, he will
Yep.
open up.
Yep.
Even on the porch, we have like a porch swing, which makes it feel
Perfect.
more casual. In the car, I try to bring up tough stuff in the car, especially when he was younger and he'd be in the back seat.
Yes. Yes. Totally.
Because
That's
it's
a great
just
time to talk about sex because
yeah,
nobody's looking at each other
exactly.
and they can't get away.
Yes. Now it might make me a distracted
Yeah.
driver, but
Yeah.
there's just so much more low pressure.
Yes.
And I even remember that as a kid, opening up and on car rides and in movements. So that's enough. If you're still trying to like sit down and have this eye to eye conversation, that may stop working well for you if it ever did.
Agree. Take the pressure off of both of
For
you, right?
sure. And
Yeah.
you mentioned the drive-by, and it's making me think that isn't just a bedtime thing for my
Yep.
guy. He'll just throw out like a casual
Yep.
comment during the day, that casualness, like it's like a weighty, heavy,
Yes.
we need to dig into this kind
Yes.
of thing, but says it like a drive-by. And I'm like, hey, wait, what is this? Tell me, I wasn't listening. Tell me more about that.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's like so casual, but it's almost like feeling it out. Like, is this something we can talk about?
That's right. That's right. I have the option to dip if this starts to get intense, right?
Yes, exactly.
I think that's one of the biggest challenges for me as a parent is realizing, oh, this is a moment right now, right? And then dropping what I'm doing in order to be available in that moment, because that is how they do it.
Yes.
And it's hard to do when you're
tend
working.
to come at what we feel are
Yes.
inconvenient
Yes.
moments.
Yes.
And you can't, I mean, look, you can't always drop everything. And I have been known to say, like, I really want to talk about this.
Mhm.
I'm like way too distracted. Like, let's
Yes.
do it at dinner or, after dinner or whatever.
Beautiful.
Which I think is okay to
I
say,
do.
like, I can't give this, my full attention right now.
I agree. Yeah.
That's a great strategy. So we're talking about a lot of the challenges and maybe how we navigate them. Do the challenges and then also the strategies for navigating them, do they change when there's a mental health diagnosis and neurodivergent diagnosis, anxiety, depression? I mean, I know everything's magnified. So like you're talking about having one foot in the younger age set and learning to think ahead, which requires executive function. So to use my son as an example, again, he is several years delayed in his executive function. So at some point that will probably be brought up to speed, but it'll take a while. So what does that mean with respect to what we're talking about today?
Well, I think it's really great to know when your kiddo has executive functioning issues, really, let's say with ADHD, for example, to know that your kiddo is going to be about 30% younger, quote, right? And it helps, I think, a lot of parents. It sounds like you already are aware of that. Like, it helps a lot of parents to just kind of temper our expectations and slow our roll.
That was huge for us when we realized that.
Yeah.
And confusing because he has always been advanced in like verbal skills.
Sure.
and vocabulary.
Sure.
And just kind of, everyone has always said he's like an old soul. Like you always have had adult conversations with him.
Yes.
So it's really hard in that case to remember that, like, executive functioning wise,
It's so tricky,
he's
right?
not there.
Yes, and many of our kids are like they don't match, right? Because they are like in all adolescents are doing this, right? They're going
Yeah.
back and forth between child and adult constantly, and everybody does it a little bit different. So, your kid might be holding forth on some theory, right? Or insight in one regard, and then on the other one, again, doesn't ever put the toilet paper back on the roll, right? Or change the toilet paper roll because their executive functioning might not be up to speed. And so I think it's important to know our own kid, right?
Mhm.
And to watch, and not to say, oh, because they are very verbal or because, they're very good in school or something like that, they should be able to do this other emotional or social or right executive
Yeah.
functioning development kind of thing, and to not judge our kids for which is tricky, right? Or get frustrated
Yes.
with them if they don't match up, because really none of us match up and are at the
No.
same level with all those different skill sets, right? And
Right.
to have compassion and understanding for our kid at the
Mhm.
where their particular skills are, and to know like our job isn't to get them from here to here immediately. It's to help them grow at their own pace,
Yes.
right?
Yep. But if we don't recognize this and constantly remember it, we could perceive our child as any number of, or our teenager as any number of things, like
Yes.
lazy, forgetful,
Yep.
all
Yep.
like the negative
Manipulative, oppositional, all the
labels,
things. Yep.
which
Yep.
is important to recognize, because our perception of why it's happening is going to then dictate our like how we interact, right?
Absolutely. I find that um I hate the word lazy for anybody, really.
Oh yeah, of course.
Right? But like I hear it a lot, and I think, and I hear kids call themselves lazy, right? And it's
Yes.
like, I don't really believe in lazy. I think that, if we're not doing a thing that we quote want to be doing or should be doing, there's usually a reason,
Yes.
an unstated reason,
Yes.
right? And so if we or a therapist or whoever can help the person kind of express explicitly what's really in the way, a lot of times that's kind of all it takes, right? And then you
Yep.
can problem solve around that thing.
Yep.
It's the struggle it's the unwillingness to say the thing that's in our way because it's embarrassing, or somebody's going to judge, or we think somebody's going to judge it, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I obviously work with younger children,
Mm-hmm.
or the parents of younger children, and we're constantly stressing, like, kids' behavior is communication, right?
Yes.
And what they're communicating, if they're, whatever you're labeling it, they refuse to do this and they won't do that.
Yep.
And there's either an unmet need,
Yes,
or a lagging skill.
yes.
And that doesn't just go away as our kids reach these teen years,
No.
particularly if they do have some sort of diagnosis that
Yep.
we know represents a delay. Then there clearly is a lagging
Exactly.
skill set.
Yeah.
And that is just so helpful for me to remember. It's the same, like, I don't know, reflecting back on my parenting, I don't know where in the journey, when you have a newborn,
Uh-huh.
you're so hyper focused on, like, okay, they're crying.
Yeah.
So are they hungry?
Right.
Are they wet? Are they tired? Like, which we have like this checklist that we
Yes.
go down.
Yes.
And that really never goes away,
does not.
even for us as adults, right? Hungry, tired, like, what is
Yes.
that HALT acronym?
Yes.
But somewhere along the way, we stop
Yep.
sort of going down a checklist of, like, okay, what's underneath
What do they need? Yeah.
this?
What are
And
they
I
trying
guess
to
it's
tell
when
me?
they turn verbal and we just
Yes.
assume that they could tell us.
Yes. Yes. And when they're taller than us, right? And have the
Yes.
same vocabulary as we do, we think, why aren't you just saying it? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anytime in my head, I'm like, what is wrong with
Yeah.
him?
Exactly.
I go, wait, did I feed him? Which,
Right.
like, at this age, I shouldn't really need to feed him. But again, he's not, like, he doesn't always have an awareness of, that those internal sensations, like,
That's
oh,
right.
I'm hungry, I haven't eaten in hours. Honestly, I don't. I can sit here at my desk and be
sure.
like, wait, it's 3:00 in the afternoon. Did I even feed myself today?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I do think that's really helpful for parents to kind of go back to that mentality of, like, okay, there's like, I see what I see, but
Yep.
what's, this is the tip of the iceberg, what's underneath the surface.
100%.
And
100%.
you do sometimes feel like a detective, but that's our gig.
That's our job. That's right. I often say to parents, I use that same model of when they were kids. Like I say, when a 13-year-old gets quote snarky, right? For example, it's like, listen, when they were 2 and they had a meltdown in the Target, right?
Yep.
Because they were tired.
Yep.
We knew what that was about, right? It's
Yep.
the same thing, right? They don't have the skills to manage their emotions right now yet. And that's what they're showing you. They're not being mean because they're bad kids, right?
And there's no value in should. You should be able to handle this better because other kids your age can.
That shuts kids down and makes them feel judged.
And it doesn't solve any, like,
no, it just makes them feel
I
weird.
should be able to parallel park, but guess what? I can't.
Exactly.
I sweat, I cry, I drive around the block. I'm late.
Absolutely. So I think in those moments, having our kid, paying attention to our kid and asking ourselves, what do they need to learn, right? And sometimes they don't need to learn anything. They just need to be upset, right? So, so being with our kid, right? Being tuned into our kid first, right? And knowing that they need to feel safe with us and that they need to know that we understand how they feel, right? Is like so key.
The validation
is key. It's even more important during adolescence, I think, because the world gets more complicated for them. Yeah.
And what I like to stress about validation, and again, I'm not saying this as a person who does it well, and we're learning, I say my partner and I, because we're in couples counseling to communicate better, we're learning how important it is to start there. It doesn't mean that you agree with the other person, right? You don't have to be like, yeah, I was really being, a butthole in that scenario. Right. It's just like, I hear how you feel. I hear how you're coming from. I see it.
Yep.
And I'm not just going to launch into my defense or my response or my attack or whatever it's going to be. It's so key in all social interactions. So why wouldn't it be key with our teenagers who still kind of have one foot, in each place?
They do. And I think that it can be, it's one of the things that kids need the most at this age and get the least, I think, because they are doing dumb things a lot, right?
Yes. Yes.
There's no denying that the things that they're doing aren't the best choices a lot of the time, but that's not what's, we can't start there, right? They're not going to hear it unless they feel like we understand where they're coming from and we care and we understand their intent. And then you can start to talk about what would you do different, right, going forward. But it's very difficult for parents, I think, a lot of times to validate feelings for kids, especially when the parent is in the hot seat, right?
Yes.
If our kid is saying, you did, and they're angry with us, right? You did blah, blah, blah. For many of us, our initial reaction is to defend, right? This is why I did this, and I'm the parent, and and that's a great way to shut down a conversation and hurt the relationship, right?
And you mentioned, thinking about how we were parented, and that's probably a whole nother episode. Actually, I'll make a note to do that episode with you. Is that something we're processing ourselves too? If you weren't validated as a child, this piece is going to be next to impossible for you until you really, really, really work at it, because you're going to feel, for a whole host of reasons, I guess we won't get into, but it's hard always, but it's harder if that's not the way you were parented. And a mantra we're trying to have in our house is, I want to be the kind of, and hopefully our parents aren't listening, but because they are all still alive, let's be the kind of parents, let's parent the way we wish we had been parented, not the way we were parented.
Yes.
Because sometimes I'll look at my partner and be like, that's your mother. That wasn't you. That was your mother. You just literally turned into your mother.
That's great.
And ew.
Right. Wow.
But it takes a lot of practice and self-awareness and work to, to realize that.
Yeah.
And if you were parented amazingly, congratulations. That's great for you.
Congratulations.
But
Right.
a lot of us were not.
That's right. That's right. All we can do is do better, right? And I
Yes.
think that, I tell parents a lot of time, validation is magic. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
Because when our kid feels understood, like when they understand that we're really listening and we understand where they're coming from, not that we necessarily agree, but that we understand where they're coming from, that our temperatures go down so much, right? Our shoulders go down, our stress goes down, our need to defend goes down, our cognitive abilities start to come back online when we feel safe, right?
Yep.
If our kid is being unreasonable, right? It's probably because they don't feel safe or understood in some way, right?
Yep.
And so if we can do that first, and then we can have the conversations that we want to have.
And that's a good point, and totally off track from our
Mhm.
questions, but we're good with it.
Ah,
So a lot of times, so I do toilet training. I
yeah.
coach parents through toilet training. They're littles, and a lot of times they're struggling because they don't feel safe in this new version
Mhm.
of the process, and parents get really confused, and
Yeah.
they're like, what do you like? First of all, they know how to pee and poop. Like, why are they having
Right.
such a hard time just
Right.
redirecting it, right? But it
Yeah.
is a big deal for them.
Yeah.
And when I say, well, they're not giving you a hard time. They're having a hard time, like within their body.
That's
They
right.
don't feel safe because the security blanket of the diaper is gone and they're sitting instead of standing. And parents get, as soon as they hear that word safe, I lose them, right? Because now all of a sudden they're thinking, like, what is she saying? What am I doing that I would make my kid not feel like, of course they're safe. They
Um,
trust me. Nothing bad is happening here.
right. I
So
would never hurt them. Yeah.
can you dig into that safe for any parent who, like, we
Yeah.
just lost them when you said that? Like,
Yes.
they can be in a safe, responsive, supportive home environment. What do you
Yes.
mean by they don't feel safe in that
Yes.
moment?
Of course, you're providing a safe, responsive home environment. The what is important is that the kid perceives that in the moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm safe right now, right? But if somebody came in and told me, I was, why didn't I change the oil in the car, and I started to get upset, right? I wouldn't be feeling safe. I would be feeling attacked, right? So it's my
Right.
my perception in the moment is what's important, right? So it's
And
not
it's
just that.
more of a nervous system,
Yes,
a body driven unsafe, not a like, I'm afraid you're going to do something to me right now,
that's right.
physically
That's right.
unsafe.
Safe in like a macro in a different way of like emotionally safe, right? That
Yes.
I'm not threatened with, I don't know, just your anger or your disappointment or
Right.
your.
Or being like found out. Like when
Yep.
you get caught in a lie, even if it was accidental, and your brain starts going really fast, and then you're tempted to like tell another one to kind of get
Yeah.
out of it. That's sort, if you can think to like a moment of that, that's sort of the, you know, am I a liar? No. But do I feel
No.
like I need to sort of add to the story to make myself feel safer? Yes.
Yes.
So it's that
Yes.
kind of, yeah, unsafe, which I think that's definitely something we want to clarify for parents. So how can we know if our teen's behavior is more related to being a teen
Uh-huh.
and all the, hormonal developmental things that come with that versus their diagnosis if they have one?
Yeah.
So this is something we struggle with a lot in our house. And does it even matter? Like,
Mhm. Yeah, not, I thought a lot about that question because you had mentioned it previously. It doesn't really matter that much the short answer. It doesn't really matter that much. Because all teenagers are going through these same tasks. It might just look a little bit different, right?
right.
Depending on the kid, maybe depending on the diagnosis. So
Mhm.
it's important to know the diagnosis, I guess. It's important to know how it shows up for your kid,
Mhm.
right? So that you can interpret your own kid's behavior, while keeping in mind these kinds of tasks, for these
Right.
developmental tasks. For example, if my kid is um, autistic, right? I might, um, he's still going to want to be close and connected, right, to people. He just might not want to do it with physical touch a lot, or he
Right.
might not want to do it in the quantity that another kid might, right? But they still
Mm-hmm.
want to know that they have that people care about them and get them,
Right.
so it's about, how does it show up for my kid, right?
Right.
How do they express that? And I guess one of the ways that, or um also, yeah, they might want to, they might be going through a lot emotionally, but maybe they're not going to be able to put words to it the same way another kid might, right? But knowing your kid is going to help you know that they're going through something emotionally. So I don't know if that answers your question, that the tasks are
Yeah,
the
I
same.
think it helped. I think it's something I struggle with a lot of like and especially because I have somewhat parented, other kids that weren't mine. I was a nanny in a former life. I'm much older than all of my siblings, but it's different when you're the parent. So I have one child. I really don't have much to compare him to. So I constantly struggle with like, hey, is what's going on today? Like, is he just being a teenager?
Yeah.
Or is this like something we need more tools from the providers that are working with us? Or like, and I don't know why it seems so critical to me to know the difference. But as I go along, I don't even think you necessarily, it is also tied together. I don't even know that you can.
Yep.
And ultimately, I don't know that you're still going to need to find the strategies that work for your particular
That's right.
teen and where they are right then. I guess it matters to me because I tend to be more patient and more sympathetic, empathetic, whatever the word is, when I do attribute it to a diagnosis. But I don't know if that's correct either. Like being a teen could be its own diagnosis with all the hormone shifts that are happening and all the internal conflicts. Like we could think of that the same way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that was a decent answer.
I think that's really true. Just like what you just said is that, right? In the end, it doesn't really matter. But I think that we all, regardless whether our kid has a diagnosis or multiple diagnoses or no diagnoses, right? We're all wondering, is this normal? Is this okay?
Yes.
What are they going
I'm
through?
just such a why person. Like we were talking about my new fun phenomenon of hot flashes before we started. And I'm constantly wondering, I'm like, is it perimenopause? Is it like, I just need to, and I'm like, what does it matter? You're having a hot flash, you're uncomfortable, like fix it.
Right. Right. Exactly.
Who cares why it's happening? Turn on the fan, strip off some layers.
Yes.
But it does drive me, nuts to a certain degree. So I think I just need to focus less on the why and more on the, like, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to handle it? Yeah. So to that end, how can parents give their neurotypical or neurodivergent teens the space, the freedom, the privacy, the agency, all the things that they're craving, while still keeping them close when they want to be close, and without pushing them away? Like, if I would let him, he would probably stay in his room, on his phone, chatting with his real life friends indefinitely. And of course, we have some limits around that. But
that's right.
Like,
how do you know?
It's hard to set the limits because then, you have
pushback.
all these rules and for sure.
Yeah.
So how do we do that? Delicate balance.
If I knew for sure, I would,
right.
I would sell it on Amazon. But I think that asking ourselves that question all the time, or consistently, with compassion for ourselves at the same time, I think is a good place to start, right? And checking in with our own kid, watching and listening to see, do they look happy? Do they look, and if they don't look happy, that's a problem, right? Or at least it could be a problem, right?
Something to get curious about.
Yes, it's something to get curious about. Do they seem content? Do they seem to be connected? I think is the biggest thing. Connected to us in particular, right? And also to others.
At least at times. At least there's times that they're still choosing to be connected. Correct. It might not be the same connectedness we had previously.
It won't be, right? It won't be. And so what we still want to do, though, I think, is what you just said, have some limits and some kind of rules where it's like, you can do your own thing. Of course, you need to do your own thing, but you still got to come down for dinner. And there's no phones at dinner. And, we're still going to do X every Sunday together. And forced family fun, like, too bad, right? We're going to have make sure you have a touch point with your kid, or kids every day, right? At least one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully a couple, even if they're short, but have a couple of touch points with your kid that you know you can rely on, but that they know they can expect, right?
Right.
Where you're going to make space for each other so that you can get a
Right.
sense of how they are.
And
That's
even
where
if
you're
they
going to
act like
know.
they hate it
Yep.
and you're boring
Yep.
and you're strict and all the
All of
things,
those
we just
things.
kind of take that with a grain of salt
Just
and do
do
it
it.
anyway.
That's right. But the pushback is part of the process. They have to
Yeah.
do the pushback. They can't make you feel like, they have to test that, right?
Yeah.
That's part of the job. I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yeah, for sure.
yeah,
And it actually leads me to my next one. So if the desire for all those things is so common, and I think you kind of touched on this already, but in terms of red flags for, anxiety,
hmm
depression, how do we know whether to say like, oh, that's just them wanting their teen space and
yeah,
kind of independence versus like
yeah.
they're kind of
This
withdrawing
is
and
an
that maybe
issue.
they need some support.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think that anytime that here's red flags to be mindful of and to say like we gotta talk to somebody. We gotta figure out, whether it's friends, family, professionals, like we need to check ourselves on this. Um, First of all, if they're missing school,
Mm,
that's because of an emotional reason or some physical mystery physical reason that keeps coming up, right?
right.
Those are
Stomach aches,
like
headaches.
right
Yeah.
stomach aches and or headaches or I'm tired. Those are red flags for if you're missing school. If their sleep is off, if their
Mm,
sleep has changed, right? So if they're sleeping a lot more
right.
than they used to, if they're sleeping a lot less than they used to, if they're sleeping all day. In the summer, I know that a lot of people struggle with this,
Yeah.
especially, right? That's not good for them, right? So changes in sleep, changes in their engagement level. So yeah, of course they're going to want to be with their friends and stuff like that. But what if they don't? Whatever's normal for your kid in terms of their
Right.
their social engagement level, right?
Hmm.
If that starts to change, especially if it starts to become less,
Right. And
that's
we're looking more at the preferred activities,
yes,
lack of interest and engagement in things they would normally love to spend time doing. So that way we're
yes.
not measuring maybe their interaction with us, since that's changing anyway.
That's right.
We're
But
measuring the other
measuring
things.
it, right, right.
Yeah.
I think also, right, if they're dropping out of activities, if their grades, if you see a big change in their grades, right,
Mhm.
especially for the worse. If the arguments are increasing, where it's like, yes, of course, it's normal to argue with teenagers about different things that might be coming up. But if you notice a big increase in the arguments, if you're starting to have arguments every day, if the arguments don't get resolved, if you keep having the same argument over and over,
Okay.
those are signs that it's like maybe there's something deeper, underneath
Right.
this that we want to take a look at.
That's
I hope
helpful.
I
Yeah,
answered your question.
definitely. Definitely. So one of the things that you want us to think about in terms of how to engage with our teenagers is engage with them in ways that will help them grow up well.
Yeah.
When you say that, what does that mean to you?
When I say that, I think about somebody who knows how to manage their emotions effectively, right? So to have them, and also know how to work with them, right? Somebody
Mhm.
who's grown up well can manage their emotions, can have good relationships that feel good to them and manage those relationships well, right? So can they communicate their needs effectively to the people that they need to communicate to? Can they do a give and take with the people that they want to be close to? Um, and can my kid um, trust their own ability to try new things, right? And manage difficult situations that might come their way.
Right.
Those are the things that make me think, okay, you can adult, right? If you can do
Yeah.
those things, have good relationships, try new things, manage hard feelings, you're going to be all right.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And to me, all that's more important than the Like, I'm not worried that he's, has delays academically. I'm more focused on like, if you can get up to speed with that, you can live a happy, successful life.
100%.
The
Yeah.
rest can come or not come. I don't care.
Right, right.
So I have two more questions for you.
Yeah.
How are we as parents supposed to maintain some semblance of sanity when we're like, we just talked about a lot of things to be thinking about and like
Yeah.
balancing. And so what are like your top tips, if you had to narrow it down to just a few, for parents to maintain sanity during this really kind of crazy time for everybody involved?
Yeah. I would say lead with love.
Mm.
There's always tomorrow to do it a little
Mm.
bit different, right?
Mhm.
So self-compassion.
The redo, the
The
apology and the
redo.
redo. I love that.
Amen, right?
Yep.
Self-compassion. Um, and support, right? Friends, right? If you don't
Mhm.
have friends that or family that you can
That get
call
it.
and yes, that you can say
Mhm.
you're not going to, right? What
You
did
don't
I
necessarily want to call the friend who doesn't have a teenager yet and is like, why is this so hard for
no,
you?
no, no, you want to call the people that are going to laugh with you or go, "Oh,
Yes.
honey, I've been there." Right?
Yep.
If you don't have those people, get those people.
Yes.
Right? Those are
And maybe a friend who holds space, because I don't
yes.
necessarily want to hear what worked perfectly for my best friend and
Oh God,
her
no.
daughter, right? Like, I
Yeah.
just want someone to be like, yeah, this part's really hard.
Yes, I feel like as soon as, parenting should come with that automatically, right? Like in order to survive parenting, we need people who just are there for us, for
I
sure.
love that. And professionals.
Yes.
I'm a huge advocate. Like, yes, it's good to have your friend village and your family and all of that, but
Mhm.
sometimes you just need an outside observer that is completely emotionally detached from the
Yes.
situation
Yeah.
that has more than just personal knowledge. Like, can I share
Yes.
my personal experience with my teenager with somebody? Absolutely. But a professional is going to come from a totally different angle. They've seen lots more kids, lots more family dynamic.
Yep.
So don't be afraid
Don't
to
be
bring someone
shy.
in.
Yeah.
We all need help, with everything. Of course, we could need help navigating this. And it doesn't have to be, I wish families, for what I offer, I wish families would reach out when it's feeling challenging, but before it's like epically bad. Once it's
Yeah.
epically bad, we have a lot of working backwards to do, a lot of
Yeah.
fixing things.
Yeah.
So that would be my other tip, is like reach out for support and build that village when everything's still okay and the doors of communication are still open, and say like, hey, this is just something we've never done before. Maybe you need some help,
Yeah.
rather than waiting till there's like red flags all over the place. And of
Yes.
course, if you are there or you get there, don't beat yourself up.
It's
It's still the
okay.
time to reach out. But I'm a big fan
Yeah.
of like proactive rather than reactive, because I think one is easier to navigate and grow from.
I agree.
Awesome. We've talked about so many great things. I just want to
Yeah.
wrap up with a personal question, although we've both been
Yeah.
very personal this
Of
whole time. So, to our topic for today aside, what is one thing that you have learned on your own personal parenting journey that we have not touched on yet, that you wish you knew sooner, someone told you sooner, that you would like parents to hear today?
Oh gosh. I think I would say we get our whole lives with these people. Aren't we so lucky, right?
Mm,
So keep your future relationship with them in mind, right? You when you're relating with them, you want to create a uh, a space where you can stay connected throughout their lives.
mm.
I don't know if that answers your question. That's not very articulate, but like, keep it open.
Yep.
Keep your guard down. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a great point, because it's so hard not to be just in the moment. But
Yeah.
there's so many, in hindsight, of course, it is helpful. If when I was struggling with my son with, sleep deprivation
Mhm.
as a baby and a toddler, and again as a preschooler,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
now makes sense given the neurodivergence. It just was so all consuming,
Yes.
and I could not see the light at the end of the tunnel. Plus, you're exhausted, so that
Yes.
magnifies everything. And it did go on for us a very chronically long time, and it was not really a blip at the time. But when I
Right.
counsel parents now, I say like, look, I know this doesn't help in the moment. And I would have hated when someone
Oh,
said
yeah.
this to me, but I'm going to say it to you anyway. Like in the career of your relationship with this person and your career as a parent, and their career as a person, this is going to be such a little like flip on
Yes.
the radar, and there's so much else to come.
Yes.
And so I can kind of lean on that now when we're in this stage and like, look, none of our phases have lasted forever. Not even the good ones, right? I also say that to myself when we're in an awesome phase.
Yeah.
Like this is awesome, and soak it up, because nothing feels challenging right now. And that's so unusual.
Yes.
But I also know that means there's probably a big challenge coming after. And then I can say the same thing to myself. Yeah, this sucks. It's really hard. And it's, it's temporary.
Yeah.
And now I'm getting to see, like, I'm just in awe of him every day. He has really hit this stride where he is functioning independent of me, having experiences independent of me. And when he comes back and tells me all this stuff, I'm just like, who are you? Like, this is so cool. Yes. And also, like, I think I've done okay.
Yeah.
All the stuff I was so worried about, and I still worry about. And I'm like, okay, you're doing it. Like, I must have done an okay job up to this point.
Yeah. What a treat.
So there's that.
Yeah.
There's that too. Awesome. Well, that was all. That was super helpful. I would love to have you back again for another topic.
Clearly, it would be great.
Clearly, we could talk all day, but I said I'd try to keep this to an hour, and look at us. We're doing great. Wonderful. So I will, of course, let families know in the show notes where to find you if they want support. Thank you so much for joining me, Sean.
Thank you so much for having me, Erica. It was such a treat.
Parents, professionals, if you're listening, I'll be back soon with more stuff that I and others wish that we knew sooner. In the meantime, I'll leave you with my standard list of things that I learned the hardest way. It's just a portion of them. We are not meant to do life or parenting alone, so accept help when it is offered. Ask for it when it isn't. I really struggled with that and still do to some level. Also, you cannot pour from an empty cup, and these kids do still need us a lot. So make sure you are scheduling ways to refill yours every day. Right?
Yes.
Still, also, this is a work in progress for me. And just remember, there is no way to do this perfectly. There's no way to be a perfect parent. Our kids wouldn't even want perfect parents,
That's
right? So make it your goal to be a really good one. And there are countless ways to do that. And hopefully this topic today was helpful. So thank you for listening. And I'll be back soon with more. And thank you, Sean.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.